what does it look like to walk with Jesus? First of all, he says in verse 2, we're to walk, all of us, we're to walk in humility or lowliness. Now, the culture of the day when Paul was writing this was not to be humble. The culture of the day was to be very prideful. As a matter of fact, they used to make fun of Christians back in this time because they were ridiculed for being humble people. I mean, it was the time that pride was highly valued, and it was very, very important for Roman citizens to be very proud of who they were and where they came from. Folks, we live in a similar day today. In 2022, folks, it's simply we're told to exalt ourselves, to lift ourselves up. In other words, it's all about us. It's all about you and me. Think about you first, not Jesus first, not other people first. It's about us. You know, again, the Bible puts Jesus first, and then we're to put others. I think of, I've used this before, and I know that so came from the Salvation Army background. General Booth, years ago, when he was invited to speak to the convention of all the Salvation Army members there in London, and he was not feeling good, and they asked for him to give an address and write it out, and he wrote one word, and he said this. They read it. This is from our great leader, General Booth, and I want you all to listen. And they opened up the letter, and it said, "Others," signed General Booth. It was all about others. See, when we're living and walking with Jesus, it's not about us. It's about Him. It's about putting others first. Notice in verse 2, there's something else that's described when we're walking with Jesus. In verse 2, he talks about walking. Notice it says, with all lowliness, and then he says, in gentleness. The Bible uses, some of your Bibles, perhaps translations, meekness. Let me say this, it means to have a mild spirit or to be under self-control. And I'll say this, and you've heard me say it before, meekness is not weakness. Being a meek person is not weak. Do you remember Moses? Moses was a dynamic leader, and it was described in the Old Testament that he was a meek man. Meekness is one of the fruit of the Spirit. In Galatians, the Bible tells us that we're to have, that it ought to be evident in our life. Pastors, leaders ought to be, and all of us are not to be bullies. We're to be gentle and have meekness. And so look at verse 2 again. It says, this walking of our calling, that we're called, we're to do it in lowliness and gentleness. Also, we're to do it with patience, or some of the Bibles say long-suffering. In other words, that suffer long, patience. We're not very patient people, are we? I mean, I'll never forget when microwaves were the new thing. I mean, you could just pop it in and pop it out. It went really quick. Now the microwaves aren't fast enough. I mean, it's just a matter of we want everything now. I don't like waiting in long lines. How many are like me?